My husband changed me, a person who had been avoiding relationships and was all alone in the world. I believed I could truly be happy with him. Yet, after we got married, he changed. It started with yelling, then progressed to shoving, and eventually, he would kick me out of the bed even when I had a high fever. This isn't the my husband I knew. Love turned into fear over time. I want to run away, but I'm also scared to leave. However, I knew I had to tell him in the end. Please, let's get a divorce. My name is Jonna, 29 years old. I'm a housewife who has been married to my husband Jack for 2 years. I lost my parents when I was young, and the grandmother who raised me passed away when I was in high school. I was truly alone in the world. After my grandmother's death, I became bad at interacting with people, simply because it hurts when they leave. So I didn't make any lovers or close friends and lived alone all my life. However, my current husband was the one who supported me. I don't know what he found in me, but Jack asked me out on dates numerous times. Even when I declined, he was persistent, to the point where I found it annoying at first. But eventually, after going on dates out of sheer persistence, I found myself getting swept up in Jack's pace, and before I knew it, he became the most important person in my life. That's how we got married 2 years ago, but now, I'm wondering if continuing this marriage is the right thing. Because Jack changed after we got married. A few months into our marriage, he started coming home less. He wouldn't tell me when he'd be back, and would suddenly return only to complain about everything I did. Why didn't you prepare dinner for me? When I explained that I thought he would be late again today, he would sigh and look at me coldly. You're a housewife living on my money, and you can't even do the housework. What a wife you are. Saying that, he would grab his change of clothes and leave the house again. This happened several times, so I started preparing dinner even if he wasn't coming home. But then, he wouldn't come home for a week at a time. Maybe he got tired of me, or saw something he didn't like after we got married. I thought about this every day. I don't want to believe that the memories with the kind Jack were a lie. I don't want to be abandoned. I don't want to be alone. My mind is a mess. After half a year of living like this, I started to think that I couldn't go on this way. I don't want to be a burden to Jack, and this situation can't really be called a marriage. When Jack came home after a long while, I asked him if he wanted a divorce. He looked at me wide-eyed, surprised. It's not like that, Jonna. I've been late because of work. I've been so busy and stressed. I'm sorry for being cold the other day. Please don't say things like that. In a panic, Jack hugged me for the first time in months. Not realizing how busy his work was, I started to feel somewhat guilty. However, without him telling me, I can understand the difficulties Jack faces. I asked him to keep in touch more frequently and to talk to me when something happens. Of course, I promise. Seeing Jack smile, I felt relieved for the first time in a while. For a while, life seemed to go back to normal, as if my worries were unfounded. There were still days when Jack wouldn't come home, but he would keep in touch. Just only that made me happy. But the day on our first wedding anniversary, Jack canceled our plans and didn't show up at the restaurant we had reserved. I was really shocked since I didn't think he would cancel our anniversary. Of course, the reason was work. Trying to accept it because it was work-related didn't ease my sadness. I just wish you had told me earlier. When I told Jack this the day after our anniversary, he glared at me. Why would you say that? Don't you realize I'm working hard? I do appreciate that he's working. But I wished he had prioritized our anniversary. After I expressed this, Jack dropped a dish he was holding onto the floor. The sound of the breaking dish echoed through the room. I never knew you were such a selfish woman. It's a disappointment. Perhaps you had no intention of supporting me. You were just another woman who approached me for my fortune, weren't you? My mother-in-law, Jack's mom, was a self-made woman who started her own company. Jack and his brother work at her company. Because of this, Jack is seen as the future president of the company, and I was told when we started dating that many women had approached him for his money. You're the only one who truly loved me, Jonna. He used to say this happily. Of course, I've never once thought about his family's wealth. When I told him this, Jack looked at me with eyes full of disbelief. Then get a job. You're just complaining about my actions because you're bored. If you truly loved me, you could do it, right? I wondered if getting a job would solve the issue. However, I nodded to Jack's words. I didn't want him to think I was after his money, and more than anything, I didn't want to be abandoned. Maybe I was slowly losing my mind. I started to believe that Jack's anger was because I was hurting him. Eventually, I found a full-time job and started working. If I did some light cleaning before and after going to the office, I wouldn't get complaints about the household chores. Living almost like I was single, one day, I received a call from my mill. "Jonna, I heard you're working. What happened? You quit your job when you got married, right?" I replied with a wry smile, saying I had some time on my hands. My mill has always been very kind to me since we first met. As the CEO of her company, she's busy and we only meet a few times a year, but she always checks if I'm doing okay. I vividly remember how happy she looked when we went shopping together right after I got married, saying her dream had come true. I haven't asked for details, but apparently Jack had a sister who died in a tragic accident. Perhaps that is why she is so good to me, her daughter-in-law. Please make sure to talk to me if you're ever in trouble. Hearing my mill's kind words, I almost started crying. I have no memory of my parents, but I wonder if this is what having a mother feels like. It made me feel a bit warmer inside, and I didn't want to cause any trouble for my mill. Supporting my husband, the son of my mill, is my duty. Yet, I don't even know how to support him when he doesn't come home. Plus, ever since I started working, the allowance for living expenses has stopped being given. Of course, we can still live without it, but is this really okay? As I was thinking about this, I realized I was having the same problem again. Nothing has changed since those times. Maybe I shouldn't keep doing this after all. Thinking this, my husband came home to our house after a long absence. "Did you say something to Mom?" he asked me, and I told him about the phone call. Initially, he seemed a bit upset, but when he heard I hadn't mentioned anything to Mill, he relaxed and smiled. "That's my wife. Make sure you tell Mom we're getting along just fine." At his words, I asked him if we were really doing okay. "Jonna is doing a good job, so I can concentrate on my work as the next CEO of the company. Once you become the CEO's wife, I'll give you all the luxuries." His belief that these words would satisfy me made me feel sad. I didn't want to be the CEO's wife. I wanted to make a happy family with you. That's all I wanted. As I said this, I felt a shock on my cheek. My husband had hit me. "How dare you say that when I'm working so hard? I married you, and you just need to listen to me." He wasn't the man I knew anymore. Thinking this, tears started to flow. As I cried, he seemed to get even more irritated and said, "Wake me up when dinner is ready," then went straight to the bedroom. That day, I cooked dinner while crying, and we ate the tasteless meal in silence. From then on, it was hell. My husband started coming home more often, maybe because Mill said something, but he was very cold to me. It's not that I haven't considered leaving, but I didn't know if he would agree to a divorce, and I might get hit again. Since then, my husband has nudged me and even kicked me lightly. Because of this, when he is yelled at or his hand is raised, I reflexively freak out. Moreover, it was his idea for me to quit my job. Was letting me work just harassment? I have no idea what my husband wants to me. My only goal has become to be careful not to get yelled at by my husband. In the midst of this life, my husband invited me to Mill's birthday party. There will be a lot of people there, so don't embarrass me. Go to the salon on the day, and make sure to dress properly. In my difficult life, this was the only event I was looking forward to. Looking forward to seeing Mill, I decided to get through to that day. But worst of all, I came down with a high fever on Mill's birthday. I have a 39-degree fever. It might go even higher, so I can't go to Mill's house. I told that, as expected, my husband yelled at me. "Don't get sick at important times. You're really useless." I apologized over and over, but he kicked me through the blanket multiple times. "I'm going ahead, so get ready and come to the house quickly." Even with a high fever, my husband urged me to come. I can't in this condition. Ignoring my murmured voice, he just left the house. I didn't know what would happen if I didn't go. I desperately did my makeup and fixed my hair, getting ready. But each movement was slow, and with my head spinning, everything took so much time. Before I knew it, over an hour had passed since my husband left the house. Waiting endlessly, I received a pressing call from him. Enough of this. Come to the celebration right now. Don't you dare embarrass me. I hurriedly called a taxi and arrived at my Mill's house. This should keep me from getting yelled at. That's what I thought, but upon arriving at my Mill's house, relatives and guests looked at me incredulously. "Jonna, your outfit." Even my Mill gave me a puzzled look upon noticing me. My reflection in the large mirror at my Mill's house met my eyes. My makeup and hair were a mess. Ragged would be the perfect word to describe my current state. I apologized to my Mill, who looked at me coldly, but she sighed in exasperation. "Jonna, you should leave my son." To this, my husband joined in with a pleased tone. "Come on, Mom, forgive her. Jonna just overslept. She even forgot your birthday." His words, far from being supportive, made me look down. Then there was a loud slap. When I quickly looked up, I saw that Mill had slapped my husband. "What? Why?" Looking incredulous, my husband stared at Mill. "Jack, you forced Jonna to come here, didn't you?" Despite her looking so ill, is that how a person should act? As my husband scrambled to argue, he was slapped again on the opposite cheek. "There's evidence of your affair. Maybe you'd like to explain that." Following this, my husband was led by Mill into the study room. I was taken to the guest room by my Bill, where I rested. Perhaps due to the medicine or sheer exhaustion, I fell asleep as if I had lost consciousness. When I woke up, it was night, and I found my husband sitting formally with Mill, who looked disgusted. Mill noticed me and succinctly explained what had happened. My husband had been seeing someone before we got married, planning to marry her. However, his girlfriend turned out to be a thief, stealing from Mill when she visited. Naturally, Mill banned her from the house and told my husband she would not support their marriage. So, he chose me as a camouflage. The reason was I resembled his deceased sister, and he thought Mill would like me. He believed if I was accepted, he wouldn't be treated poorly. Mill didn't say much more, but surely my husband thought my docile nature would be easy to exploit. "My son was going to leave you when he became CEO. We only met a few times a year, Jonna, but every time we saw each other, you were kind of down, weren't you? That's why I investigated my son and your situation. I'm truly sorry for what my son has done." Everything finally made sense to me. My husband had never loved me from the begging. But rather than being shocked, I felt validated. I had been thinking it was time to leave. Any affection had turned into fear each time I was yelled at or hit. "Mill, I'm going to leave him." Mill nodded at my words. "Jack, you better pay a proper alimony and sign these divorce papers and the agreement." When he saw the agreement that his mother-in-law gave him, he said, "What's this about firing me from the company? And an alimony of $50,000. That's impossible, as if it was someone else's problem. My husband asked me for help. I really loved you, Jonna. It was just that my ex was so persistent. I had to meet her to protect you. Believe me. My husband was in tears, but those tears weren't for me. I still have the bruise from being kicked by you this morning. I can go to the hospital and get a medical certificate at this point. Sign the papers if you don't want to be sued. Mills seemed unaware of the abuse, and with tears, she kicked my husband out. You're truly worthless. Don't you ever cross our doorstep again. We're cutting ties with you. Afterwards, my Bill stepped in between my mill and my husband signed the papers while crying. I couldn't help thinking, if you regret it so much, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. But I guess it's partly because I held back that this happened. Watching my crying husband, I vowed never to neglect my own feelings again. After divorcing my husband, I spent busy days preparing to move and looking for a new job. However, my Bill helped me look for a new place, and my Mel introduced me to a company she knew, so I was well taken care of. I was able to find a job in the same field as before, and I received a job offer recently. Of course, I took the exam properly, so I don't think it was a connection hire, but since then, my Mel has been a bit overprotective of me, which worries me. Starting a new life while commuting to a new workplace will be tough for a while, but I feel more satisfaction and reassurance than anxiety. And about a year after the divorce, I ran into my ex-husband Jack, who was waiting near my workplace by chance. I just wanted to talk. He looked pale and his clothes were disheveled, lacking the vitality he once had. To cut a long story short, he was dumped by his girlfriend and wanted to start over with me. I couldn't help but laugh. Then, I showed him my hand. On my right ring finger was a ring I had just received. I've been dating your brother for a while now. I don't know if we're going to get married yet. I know he's a much nicer guy than you are. Besides, he is the next CEO of the company." Jack had always arrogantly assumed he'd be the next CEO, but Mill had never chosen him as a successor due to his unserious attitude towards work. "My marriage to you was truly painful, but there's one thing I'm thankful for. Thank you for introducing me to your family. I'm being taken very good care of now." As I said this with a smile, my ex-husband collapsed on the spot. He knelt on the ground, sobbing. It was the moment I realized how good it was to have left such a person. Considering everything with my ex-husband, I honestly can't think about marriage yet. Even so, I've decided to trust again the people who supported me during my toughest times. This time, I'll live honestly with my feelings.